You're strong.
I know.
It's okay. I've got you now.
Just like in the movies.
Welcome to SuperWonder Legacy. I'm Jared. I'm here with Britt. What's up, Britt?
Hello, hello.
So today we're going to the danger zone here. So we're talking about the problems with Lois and Lane and Steve Trevor and why, in our humble opinion, they don't work as love interests for Clark and Diana, respectively. So before you guys start writing hate in the comments, this is our opinion. This is our opinion, and it's based on fictional characters, which, by the way...
Okay, they're talking about fictional characters. Fictional characters.
Good. Just want to establish that right there. So, Britt, to start off, what do you think about Lois Lane and Steve Trevor as characters?
Okay, right. So this is our opinion, but we're also putting in facts of throughout like the eras.
Mm-hmm.
First off, within the Golden Age, Lois hated Clark. Let's establish that. First, it was because it was Clark is the disguise. Superman was the real person. So I guess they wanted to make it seem like she hated the disguise. She called him a coward, spineless. She even tried to drug him for a story.
And she didn't want that.
Yeah, and she didn't want basically like a rival. She wanted to be the top reporter, and this guy coming in, Clark was kind of being unethical from the get-go. But the main part of it was because he was trying to, he didn't have the super senses back then that he has now. So he had to work undercover basically as a news reporter to get the news of what's going on. Then you have...
That's ridiculous. Yeah, because I read... so I have Action Comics 1000, and there is a reprint of one. And I remember reading this, and I'm like, so my hatred of Lois goes all the way back to the very beginning of the Superman run. It's not just like new stuff, because again, it's like when I read her during S-TAS, and it's like anytime I see Lois Lane, she is actually the way she is in the early Action Comics. She is very abrasive. She is very manipulative. She is the stereotypical journalist, in other words. So I'm like, I'm supposed to like this character?
Right, but the thing is, they, most of the fans, they would say, well, she's in Action Comics 1, and so she's like the, I think Bendis wanted to say like she's the first lady, or, they would say like she's the first lady of comics, but like, well, she's just a love interest to me. As a female reader, I don't really see why they emphasize on that. Because she doesn't do anything important to me,
No,
So,
and when they say, well, here's how she doesn't, it's important, she humanizes Clark. And we'll talk about that later. But still, I'm like, A, Clark doesn't need humanizing. And B, if you really think that Clark is on a hair trigger of turning evil because of who he sleeps with, maybe he shouldn't be a superhero.
exactly. Trying to justify Lois and Steve is always throwing Clark and Diana under the bus.
Mm-hmm.
And so we go to Golden Age Steve, and he was basically, to be the opposite of Lois as the same as Lois, but as a male, a gentleman in jeopardy, a manzel in distress or whatever. And he basically Marston made him purposely blonde to be like submissive,
Mm-hmm.
to be like this, to be the manzel. or whatever.
Memes, I
He
love that.
did have he did have like Steve save Diana, to try, I guess, to have that equality. I don't know, or this macho type thing. But yeah, that's basically what that was. So when people want to, say that it's Clark and Lois or Steve and Diana, you really do have to analyze the errors and see that it's no ship is perfect, but
Except for
there's
Super
some
Wonder.
very but there's some very toxic, terrible stuff within these errors of these, um default couples.
Yeah,
And
and the thing is, like, I'm against the whole default couple thing because A, that is extremely limiting on the story. And second off, as time passes, you're not going to be able to. I mean, it just stalifies the stories again. And it's like, even with my parents, and I use them as examples because they're like general audience members. I like to use that as my example. So even they're like, yeah, he actually works better with Diana and stuff. And it's like, it's just the thing is like going to Lois. See, my problem with the whole "it's always been this way" is that there's plenty of stuff that's always been this way in comics, and they did away with that because it didn't work. And I'm like, if something doesn't work, and sales wise has shown that Lois married to Superman doesn't work, you have to look at other ways to approach this.
and that's the thing. When they say it's always been this way, it hasn't. Because
No.
as I said, going through the errors, it's a lot of drastic changes to make it work and it doesn't still.
Mhm.
Or it's a lot of like taken away, especially from Clark, that we go, well, that's going forward, but you know, to basically their supporting cast in general
Mhm.
is set within the golden age, for that time. Lois as a reporter, you know, um, we do need reporters, but with technology, with social media, that fast, having camera phones and stuff, people are recording, news going live on Facebook, going live on, Instagram and stuff, and giving news out. So to boost her up as a reporter, it's kind of like we're shifting away from that,
Plus
especially
the
even with
fact
the Daily Planet.
Plus the fact, speaking of Daily Planet, remember the new 52 when he left with Kat and formed the
The
independent
blog,
news? Yeah, the blog, and yeah, because that's honestly what people are doing nowadays. Hell,
right?
this technically counts as a blog, but the point is that's it, adjusting to the times. Because I got news for you, comics have always, because here's what people don't understand: they act like Superman. I'm going to use the Christopher Reeve Superman as an example. People act like that has always been Superman, and it hasn't. Because I got news for you. Post-crisis Clark is not the Christopher Reeve Clark. We talked about this last week, but my point is, it's the idea that, okay, so th- you can have a version of a character like, hell, I'm sure there were versions of Lois that are moderately that are tolerable.
Tolerable.
I kind of like the Smallville one and the Snyderverse Lois, but my point is, in terms of the comics, largely these characters have largely turned them off because, again, it's like what it turns into is, actually no, what it misses is that if you look at any documentary on DC or Marvel, they will show you how they have changed these characters throughout the time period to adjust to the time. Because hell, that's why by that justification, Julie Short should not have updated Green Lantern, Flash, and all those people to like modernize DC to the times. Because beforehand, Green Lantern was like a magic character, and then he goes, okay, wait a second. People are interested in science fiction nowadays. How about we just, well, granted, create a new character and then just give him the mantle and say, okay, you know what? Let's turn it into a sci-fi book.
Yeah. Um, but the thing is, they're changing the main character, but the problem that they have in general is the supporting cast. When they have nothing, like, they don't have any idea how to elevate the supporting cast, that's when it all falls apart. And that's when your main character becomes stagnant. And that's Superman's problem that's been, since the 80s. And that's when we transition to the Silver Age and the Bronze Age, which is basically the crazy hijinks, you can't really take that serious, the Silver Age, because it was some crazy stuff.
Superman carrying paying a solar system of planets on a chain.
Yeah, you have, but this is where the Lois fans, they use the Superman's girlfriend Lois Lane book all the time, but to show her independence, to show the sales. Yes, it did sell. But again, the top marquee was Superman at that time. Then you have her hijinks or whatever. The promise of the book was her trying to manipulate Clark to marry her. If you wanted to show her independent, why is her main focus on getting him to marry her?
Yeah, exactly. I'm looking at here is like the greatest ambition of my life is to be Superman's wife, and I'm like, first off, you're holding up a book called Superman's Girlfriend, Lois Lane. And second off, like you said, the object of that book is for her to tie herself to Clark. So I'm like, something doesn't add up. It's almost as if this is very like inconsistent arguing.
Yeah. And then you have the Bronze Age, which kind of the Silver and the Bronze Age pretty much goes in the same realm, but within the Bronze Age they tried to change her a little bit to make her less obsessive and make her worthy of to be a love interest. And then this is when when they also brought in again Lena and Diana in some instances to show like to basically have them as a mouthpiece or something, that Lois is the one love interest. And that's something that I really don't agree with. And that's what they've been doing for so long, is using other better love interests, better characters to prop up these problematic ones.
Hell, I texted Brit the other day because I read by accident. I don't want to say by accident because I don't think it's possible by accident to read a book. But I'm like, I broke down and I read the first issue of the 2018 Death of Superman comic, which basically what it is, it ties into the DC AMU and it's supposed to explain, here's what happened after the death of Superman. All right, so it's basically Diana saying, oh my gosh, our relationship was great, but Clark really belongs with Lois. And that's why I hated Rebirth, because legit, I have that issue where they're going through it and then it's like Lois going, oh my gosh, you with Superman looks like the truth. And I'm like, what the hell am I reading here?
Yeah, at that time, and that was published in 2018 or 2017, 2018, when they were transitioning a Rebirth, or in trying to do that across the board, was Clark is only supposed to be Superman and Lois. So even with Diana, it's like she is the goddess of truth, speaking the truth, and us as an audience is supposed to now take that seriously because it's coming from her, even though these characters aren't writing themselves. So obviously we know that it's the writer, and I think it was actually, those chapters are written by one of the writers from the original Death of Superman. So
that explains it. Yeah, as soon as I see Louise Simonson, and I'm like, I like your writing. Don't get me wrong. Just the minute I see that, you're exposing your very blatant bias.
Right. And I'm just like, you didn't have to. First of all, that really doesn't go with anything. Even if you rewatch the movies, it's like, where does this fit in? You have Lois getting like a gun from somewhere, or something, a military gun, and she's shooting parademons somehow, and it's like, where did all that come from?
That
Even
wasn't
in
in
the
the
movie.
comics, and that wasn't even in the movie. She wasn't even in the movie. What are you doing?
Yeah, so that is what these relationships basically are built on, is revisionism, built on, glossing over things or something like that. And that is right there why it for that time I was really soured on DC, because
Mhm.
you had this relationship that it was only that relationship. The only thing that people, it was the fans, that will say like Superman and Wonder Woman is better, or whatever, have their opinion. But within the story, it was just Superman and Wonder Woman's story. You didn't have to have um Lois being a mouthpiece for Diana or something like that. We never had that. They
Yeah,
did have that, like post crisis, I would say, was guilty of that, of well, even within here, with the Lois book, she would be like, have these dreams or whatever of like Superman marrying Diana or something like that.
yeah,
But it's still, yeah, but it still was like respectful. Um, just like within that silver age, you didn't take it seriously. But within modern age, you take everything seriously now. So yeah, with New 52, I see a lot of that, of, these opinions that are lies,
yeah.
and they try to force it as facts of saying how Lois was treated bad during the New 52, or Lois was, thrown under the bus. It's like, where? The only reason why she was supposedly thrown under the bus is showing that she didn't have a place because she wasn't the love interest. So that pretty much
And
shows.
to your point, when we talked about New 52 Superman, it just made her, it just characterized her like she was in the Golden Age, and the same thing with Superman. It's basically a modernization of Golden Age Superman in terms of Superman and his even supporting cast.
Right. And so when we go from New 52, and how so many people, well, the generation now is divided, very undefined with DC, because it's some people who they think that these characters are just from post crisis. Like,
Nope.
so when you do like the modern era of New 52, or if you do bring up the Golden Age, it's like, no, that's taboo or something like that.
Mhm.
So with going back to the Silver Age, you like I said, Lois fans, it's kind of like they cherry pick things
Mhm.
that will fit a narrative. So just
Well,
like how you said with the
mhm.
death of Superman, that book of basically, I don't know, it was a total Elseworlds. It was like a fan fiction Elseworlds to
It's
me,
it's it's
because
it's a bad fan fiction about the death of Superman. That's what it is.
and and even with trying to tie it with the movie, it doesn't even make sense with the movie itself.
Or it's
If
like,
you
here's the funny part, Britt. You know what's kind of funny? You know my complaint about the Dead Superman is they did it off screen, right? They could have done it in the comic. They could have at least to they could have at least given me that. At least show them breaking up in a flashback in the comic. They didn't even give me that.
because there was pretty much no justification for it, and no
Oh no.
justifiable reason. They couldn't come up with that. I mean, they couldn't even come up with a good reason even in New 52. And of course Tomasi was trying, ironically, he wrote the movie and did, Last Days or In Truth. And it was basically like, I don't even know why he wrote it, as like Diana was supportive in both the movie and In Truth, but it was Clark that basically turned the 180 on her. You know, it's like he just turned into very much an a-hole for
And you know what's
no
kind of
reason.
funny? You know what's kind of funny? That's where people get the characterization of New 52 Superman as an a-hole. Because if you read the comics, he's not really. Pre-Truth arc, he's not that. So when you think about it, Tomasi basically cultivated the biggest Superman character assassination of the modern era.
But you know, that pretty much shows how the Superman and Wonder Woman book, though, was
Mm-hmm.
very much influence. It was a big influence on the era, because if so many people were were focused on that book, and how we basically saw the downfall of it from one creative team that, art was beautiful, the writing was beautiful. He Charles really understood both individually and as a couple. And the book was basically balancing out, their characterization, because it was all over the place. You had Lobdell, you had Action Comics,
Mm-hmm.
you had Wonder Woman solo, and her solo book was basically like an Elseworlds within New 52,
Yeah.
because it was so isolated. But the
It
thing
wasn't
is,
until like the Finches came on that at least Superman showed up once in the book, and actually they showed her hanging out with the Justice League. So I get the feeling that when the Finches came on the book, they told them, "Get her hanging out with the DC universe."
yeah, I mean, Azarella, he wanted to tell a story. He
Mm-hmm.
wanted it to be isolated. I mean, even with Steve, he was undefined. I think within his part, Steve was actually supposed to be old or something,
Mm-hmm.
or they weren't really together. I don't even think in his part of the book. So, you know, so yeah, that's basically how he was writing it. And yeah, it works as a solo, but so many people, the faults of the gods or the faults of the Amazons, they emphasize that, but don't emphasize on Diana, her character. Her character wasn't that bad at all. You
Mm-mm.
know, I mean, it was. I would take the New 52 with its faults, not only because Superman and Wonder Woman was a couple, but because it wasn't that bad. As now that I'm researching more, for these characters, and going back to read like just the stories that has been glossed over. And it's kind of like, okay, what's the difference between New 52 with its flaws and Post Crisis with its flaws? Honestly, I would say Post Crisis
Sales.
had way more issues than New 52 had.
Oh
Yes, it
yeah.
was communication issues, but Post Crisis was very dark, was very, problematic with some things. Wonder Woman's book was not at all, they didn't take her character seriously at all.
Well,
She
and
was,
also the thing is, and Britt, you and I were talking about back and forth when James Gunn posted the Warrior Wonder Woman picture for Wonder Woman Day. She had the sword, and it ignited an internet debate on the sword to the point where people are now pro sword or anti sword. But I'm like, the errors that you're favoring are the ones where she snapped a dude's neck because he was mind controlling Superman. I'm like, excuse me, if I'm like she would 100 and she has used swords and battle axes before, so let's not like talk about the fact that pre-new 52 she was a bloodthirsty warrior woman. She's always been that because she's a freaking Amazon warrior.
and it's not really even bloodthirsty. She's not. She's, especially when they fought Kingdom Come. First of all, that is it's a cautionary tale or whatever. It's where, stuff hit the fan, and it's a war. So
Mm-hmm.
what do you think she's gonna do? Do you think she's gonna be like Mother Teresa or something? No.
Nope.
She's going to, like I said in a previous episode, she's basically like a frustrated mother. And what does a frustrated mother do? I know, I've been around mothers and they will kick, your butt.
You
And
threaten
and
the
so
kids, that's all. The gloves come off.
yeah, and that's basically what she was doing. It was kind of like she was a frustrated mother trying to get her rowdy kids together. And that's what that was. She lost everything. She tried to go the peaceful route. Even her future husband, was, giving her a hard time because he wasn't being the man that she knew he could be. And so she had to like push him too to get up and get this right. So
Exactly.
it's kind of like these characters cannot have any flaws. They can't go into a gray area. um Especially Superman and Wonder Woman, they can't,
Yeah.
because it just feels like they have to be, everything has to be peachy,
Exactly.
or and that's the thing, when they say that it's always been that way, no, it hasn't,
Nope.
because when you go to the Silver Age, all the hijinks and stuff like that, the lowest manipulation of wanting to get married, all of that, that is not a very peachy, healthy relationship. It's
No, it
not.
is not. It is not. And plus, see, here's the thing. And again, going back to what I said, and then we'll move on to silver, bronze, steel, state. Steve, geez,
Steve.
is that? Thank you. Is that just because it's always been? I actually said this to my dad once because he said, "Well, Superman's always been with Lois," and I'm like, it doesn't necessarily mean that's what's best for the character or the company in general. Because New 52, that's why a lot of these people hate the New 52, because you know what it did? It showed that these relationships with Lois and Steve, Steve to a major degree for me, because this is where I started my absolute abhorrence of that character. Um, New 52 showed that you could take those characters away from the romantic side of the DC universe and it would sell more than if you left them in. That's why a lot of these purists on Twitter, and mostly Twitter, because Twitter's a hellhole, that's why they hate it so much. And that's why it's interesting. I always love seeing so many people revisiting the New 52 and going, oh my gosh, this was great. Particularly like in the Charles Soule era of Superman, Wonder Woman. People talk about how with the New 52 Superman, take him with his flaws in terms of stories. He's about a guy who lost everything and was fighting to keep his relationship together and still be the hero we need.
Yeah, when I saw that review, Twitter review, but it but they would still be like, well, he would be better if he wasn't with Diana. And it's kind of like,
He
okay,
wouldn't be.
he wouldn't be.
Wait, it wasn't just that, Britt. They said if he had a different suit and wasn't with Wonder Woman. Okay, so not the New 52 Superman is what you're telling me, because those are his two defining things there.
Right. That their relationship is basically why you have that view of him, because it is taking him back to the golden age of Clark was basically the disguise, and Superman was the real person, or Cal, you know, and trying to balance out his identity. He can only balance it out when he's with Diana.
Mm-hmm.
And he can also have the outsider view and accept himself as Kryptonian when he's with Diana, because she accepts herself as, I mean, that's what their conversation was in Justice League 12 was,
Yeah,
we aren't gods, but we aren't mortal. We're
and
in
it's like
between.
the other thing is like, so glad you brought up JL12, because there was also parts of that dialogue that I wanted to bring up, which is like when Clark basically says they're talking about how they can't be close to people because of like what's going on, and then like you said, that we're not like the gods, we're not like men, so we're not like anyone. So what subtextually that was communicating to me is them going, okay, so we can't do this apart, let's do this together. We can help, because I would argue Superman and Wonder Woman together makes those two characters more human, if you want to go on the maintaining humanity argument.
Exactly. You and the thing is that they aren't. It's kind of like honestly, when people bring up the Lois and Steve keep Clark and Diana grounded or whatever, it's kind of like, so are they like Omni-Man or
Yes.
whatever?
Homelander.
Uh, are they those type of characters? Did Clark come from Krypton when he's an adult, or did he come when he was a baby? Was
Or
he not
is he like
raised?
Flashpoint Superman? Because remember, in Flashpoint Beyond, it was retcon that he was sent to Earth to prepare the way for an invasion.
Right, or was he in a laboratory? Did he grew up in a laboratory or something like that? No, he
Also,
grew up
really great way to discredit the help that Jonathan and Martha Kent had on raising Clark.
exactly. He grew up here as a baby, or whether you want to say he's 2 years old or he's a baby. Post crisis, of course, had him with the birthing matrix or
Matrix,
whatever
yeah.
to have him as an American, that whole thing. But still, he was still raised by them, and even within the golden age, they do have this debate about should the Kents be dead or should they be alive. And so many people say they should be alive, but to for like Clark to have this wholesome, he has everything. And that's the thing that people think he's boring because yeah, he has everything on a silver platter. He has, the perfect like the if you want to have a drama free marriage or whatever with Lois to make it seem like it's just perfect. You have that. John Kent, the way he was basically forced into canon, basically screwing up, you know, everybody else's history to make him fit. You have John Kent. You have the Kents miraculously now alive. You have him, hiding. You hate that part of Convergence when he was hiding throughout everything, and now they've, killed New 52 or whatever that whole reborn storyline was to make everything perfect for him. That that is what makes him unrelatable.
Well, not
But
only
New
that,
52,
hang on. And here's how Superman Reborn is even more of a character assassination on the New 52 Superman. So when he's fighting Clark in his head, or like however they were doing that, because I still don't know what the hell was going on in that story. But it's actually, it was in the Trinity arc after that was trying to explain what happened, but it did a horrible job. But so in his head, the two Supermen are fighting. They're causing all this property damage, and then Lois and then Wonder Woman's like arguing with New 52 Superman, saying, "Look at what you're doing," and I'm like, "So you're painting it like?" Because when he died, he was at the point when he was classic Superman, and you're telling me that he somehow would not fight in and take civilian casualties into it. They basically portrayed him as like thoughtless, in other words, and I'm like, what?
yeah, they really wanted to throw New 52, throw really put it on a bulldozer and stuff. But again, Golden Age Superman, he was adopted, he was in an orphanage, and the Kents died when he the same, like we said, New 52 was just modern age, golden age, that's
Yeah.
all it was. And as you can see, when Clark is the disguise and all of that, his relationship with Diana works because he is just that outsider. He is that he has more stakes. You know, he's not defined by just saying that his link to humanity is Lois. It is the whole world. He he makes the whole world, like Smallville. And that's what I really love about Justice League 14 too. He said it that he protects any place that is like Smallville to him. And that was such a good line. And it's kind of like, how can you read this and say he's not Superman? How can you
Yeah.
say that?
He brings her to that farm specifically to say, I do what I do to protect the people, and that's where I get the whole argument where they make each other human, because he takes her like that and says, let me show you how I do what I do and why I do what I do, so maybe you'll So in other words, he's giving her a reason to keep fighting. Because remember, at this point, Diana's story, she just found out her apparent best friend, Barbara Minerva, was not her best friend at all and was in fact trying to manipulate her. So she was like, I don't know if I can trust anyone anymore. And then Superman goes, you can trust me. And then she goes, I don't know anything about you, Superman. He goes, well, let's change that. And Superman opens up pretty much everything about him to her at that point.
And that's another thing too, is that he was so willing to open up to Diana. Even in the movies, he was so clear. Well, it is a was inspired by the New 52, but all of these instances, he is more open and understanding towards Diana. Even with post-crisis, even with these other eras. But when we look at Death of Superman movie, and within the comics too, he was so hesitant to talk to Lois, to like open up to her. And it was such a contradiction to say that she is the one that knows him best.
No.
Even within the Reign of Superman sequel, when it was like Lois knows him better, it's like she didn't even know his identity. The
previous movie is when she learned who he is.
She didn't even. You're dating this guy that you work with. You have a close, supposedly, relationship with him as Clark Kent, and then with Superman too, and you couldn't figure out it was one and the same.
Yeah, because here's you guys gotta understand. So he was dating her beforehand, presumably. You would assume, Britt, he spends a lot of time with Lois, right, as Clark. How did she never pick up on him being? Because I get the whole he changes posture and stuff. He puts on the glasses and everything. I get that, but if Lois is this fantastic journalist, as you said, she should have been able to see through that, particularly if she's seeing him practically every moment of every day.
Even with the reveal in the movie, all he did was took the glasses off and just stared at her. That's it.
Yeah, I'm like, what? So you're telling me she hasn't seen him without his glasses once?
Right. It was no posture change. It was nothing. It was just taking off the glasses. It would have been different if they even would have had his eye color change. They didn't even have that. It was just taking off the glasses.
Now, and that's an idea, but by the way, that they could do for a movie is make it so the glasses are like Kryptonian tech that at least changes eye color or something.
Something like that. But they didn't even do that. It's kind of like, oh my God, how is this such a great romance love story or whatever? And this is the reveal. What is this? No, you have people that they live double lives and stuff like that in reality. Yeah, but what happens in reality is that you don't trust that person. Regardless, even if they are doing good, it's still the fact that they have lied to you and lived a double life, though.
I mean, hell, the way Lois reacted in My Adventures with Superman is realistically how she should act. And I love my favorite moment of it. I have my problems with the show, don't get me wrong. But when that episode came out, and I saw so many people bashing Lois Lane, legit, it was me. It was I'm among my people. Finally, I have found others like me.
But the thing is, even with that, they glossed over it. It was like they want it to be this romance that doesn't have any problems. Or even if it does, they gloss over it. They bring it up and then it's forgotten easily. And that's something that even with Superman and Wonder Woman, I actually saw a post on Instagram, and it was kind of like, it was saying that with Superman and Wonder Woman within the New 52, it was that they are a couple. First of all, of course, they are a power couple. That's how they were being promoted. And they had a joint book together. So, yeah, that's going to be. And how you can say that Lois and Clark have a natural love, it's like, well, she is a default love interest. So it's not really natural. With Clark and Diana, you have to give a reason. of why. You have to show that to,
Yeah.
you know, because they are of different franchises. They are under the same umbrella, which is DC, but they are different franchises. And
Mhm.
putting those franchises together, why? You know? And that's the thing that their book was trying to show of why are we putting these two main characters together, you know? And it worked.
And that they
But
can work together.
even the conflict, I mean,
Mhm.
they did not hold back with trying to have conflict for Clark and Diana. But with Lois, it's kind of like they know that if it is conflict, first of all, she isn't going to be likable within it.
Mm-mm.
She already isn't as a character herself. But also, it pokes big holes within the narrative, within that whole facade of trying to make it seem like Clark and Lois is like this perfect couple. So they don't have any conflict. And it's kind of like, well, where's the story? You know, and then I go back to how Tomasi, he was saying no conflict, no story when it came to Clark and Diana. But yet, when you wrote Rebirth, you had no conflict, you know, really, and you were pretty much throwing Diana under the bus, even with saying that Clark didn't marry Diana because she didn't have a pulsar, you know, or saying that
That is just the most offensive piece of writing like ever. I'm like,
it's
oh my
really
god.
shallow. It was like Diana doesn't care for man-made awards.
And you're
Her
making Clark look like he only cares about material things.
right. Diana, what she does is, as an ambassador, she saves lives. She saves children. She works with children. We've never seen Lois with children. You know, even
And speaking of which, and we'll get to that when we get to the modern times. I want to put a quirk in that because we're going to go into detail about her with the super twins because
oh yes,
yeah, you brought that up to
that
me.
really
Yeah.
stirred a little something. It was crazy. So we can go back.
Yeah. So anyway,
Go to
so
Steve.
wait, so Silver Bronze Age Steve, and by the way, I just love as soon as you sent me this image, I'm like, oh, I remember this era of Wonder Woman.
Yeah. So when Marston died, they basically turned Wonder Woman, you know, the franchise on its head. It was basically like Diana, she's the one obsessed with Steve, and but Steve was a stalker. That's where it comes from.
Oh, that's where the
He's a
new 52 got that from.
Yes, he's a stalker. He's very manipulative, very he was even hateful kind of Diana having the powers. You know, he was still trying to basically guilt trip her into basically like giving up being Wonder Woman. And Diana, she actually was, you know, being apologetic towards Steve. It was kind of like, I'm sorry for who I am. Like, no, that's not
What?
Wonder Woman.
What?
And that's the thing that comes actually from Rebirth, you know, when she was getting guilt tripped into being with Clark instead of him. And it was like, and that's
Even in
what
the
Rucka
movie
wrote.
Bloodlines as well.
Yeah, it was like that's where they got that from, was her being obsessed, or um she wasn't really obsessed with Steve, but she was basically apologizing to him that she was with somebody else, that she loved somebody else and didn't love him. And you can tell, well, first of all, their relationship didn't last but like a year within, you know, Rucka's
I
realm.
love that. That was my favorite thing, Britt, because I like moderately left comics around the time of Rebirth, and then when I got back, it was the week after they broke up, and I didn't know that. So I'm like going through my phone one day, and I'm like randomly, I wonder what happened to Diana and Steve because I saw in Rebirth they were together, and then I see the page of them breaking up, and I sent this to my co-host Lad, and I was like, well, they broke up, Diana and Steve again.
Yeah, well, within this era, even Golden Age, they Steve just didn't have a purpose. Once he crash lands on the island, and Diana accompanies him to Man's World, it's like he doesn't really have a place. Even as a love interest, I mean, that's kind of very Disney princessy type thing, but Diana's purpose is to explore, you know, and also with his military background, especially as we move forward to the modern era, the military isn't exactly, you know, how comics is playing it even now, is not a very good background, especially to associate with Diana because she isn't um basically to be associated with the American military.
Well,
The
plus here's the thing. According to the people on Twitter, she's not a warrior and she shouldn't be attached to war. Okay, then why is she with someone that's his job?
right. And even with the god, her, you know, title as God of War, Goddess of War, she what she wanted to do with that title was basically like change it to prevent war. So it wasn't to make war, it was basically like dismantle it, you
And
know.
again, this is why the Tomasi run didn't work. Because in the last issue, and I brought this up when Taladi and I discussed it on his channel, but the last issue of Volume 1, they're in London. They had just reunited, and they're talking about Diana being the god of war, and Clark's all good with that. And then she says, "I really want to try and change war, like you said." Then we get to the frickin' Tomasi run, where first off he retcons that Clark was upset about the God of War thing, and I'm like, since when?
Why?
Then
Yeah.
then I make it all of a sudden Clark's like, so you like get your power from war now, and I'm like, I get that he was trying to create drama, but this is just, oh my god, this is
Yeah,
like,
it's very contradictory. It's very like, okay, you're really trying to, you know, again, they were trying to find ways to break them up and it just didn't work. You know, it really didn't. Um, so back with Steve, it was actually even a artist in the Wonder Woman column. He was basically like, Steve is dull and boring, so you know, I killed him off. It was like even the writers at that in this era was like, you know, just kill them off. So, you know, they will kill them, bring them back, kill them, bring them back. And Diana, she basically would be like crying over him and stuff like that. And she gave up her powers. And that's where we got the mod era from. Is
oh
like
god.
she gave up her powers for him. And it's kind of like, well, now we see where, you know, Wonder Woman 84 that came from and how basically back then, you know, that it was problematic. And then with the movie, it was way problematic,
Oh
you know, for
god,
this
that
time.
movie.
Yeah, it was. So, and this is where the Wonder Woman franchise basically like just tumbled. And Wonder Woman's book was canceled for about a year. And then we go on to Perez's reboot. But it's still that the fact that you had to change Wonder Woman's as who she's supposed to be um, in female empowerment, but you make her entire franchise surrounded by a man, you know, a love interest, whatever, that no one knew what to do with his character.
It's like even when you watch like panels by Denny O'Neil back in the day, he said, "Oh yeah, the part was to bring her down to earth and stuff." And I'm like, okay, I can kind of see where you're going from there. And then he goes and to give her boyfriends and give her like real drama and stuff. And I'm like, so to make her a stereotypical girl, wow.
Yeah. So
No
you have
wonder Gloria Steinem freaked out.
so so even in the this so I say that the Bronze Age was like the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
So we go all the way from 30 years of the 90s. Steve still didn't have a role, you know, still either killed or resurrected, you know, that back and forth thing. But within the 70s and 90s, he was in the background, and basically they wanted to have Diana more of the, sci-fi, fantasy, action type,
Mhm.
and he just did not have a role within that. And they wanted to find her another love interest, which of course is Superman.
Thank you,
But
George Perez. And I just love where I just love that scene where she's like having dreams about Superman, and she's like, "What are these sensations I feel for this guy?" And I'm like, "Oh boy, this is great." I really hope they're not going to screw it up in the Superman book.
right, and here's the thing: every time, you know, even what we've talked about over these couple of episodes, you can tell the pattern of a lot of Clark and Diana's relationship is very much respected within Wonder Woman's history.
Mhm.
With um even when DC was having like a uh, when the first Wonder Woman movie was coming out, and it was recommendations. It was a timeline. Um and it said if you want a romance book, it is Superman and Wonder Woman. Under in the book is only under the Wonder Woman franchise. But with Clark's or Superman, it's it's under there, but you can tell that it's just kind of like it's like a team up book, you know.
And of course, and what's interesting is that, as you have brought up, if you look at those charts of like top books in each of these different characters' lines, the number one Superman book is Superman Wonder Woman.
Yeah, but they don't really want to. For some reason, it's like even with them as best friends, it took a while. In Diana's book, Clark was her best friend, you know, but in his book, it took a while for the writers to, acknowledge that she was featured in the book, but again, it was for Lois or whatever. It
Mm.
it their relationship was downplayed, and we are right back in that sort of time period of downplaying their relationship to have this dragged out marriage plus trying to have John too, so with post crisis, Lois was rewritten with the Man of Steel post crisis reboot. She was still unlikable, but they tried to make her at least have some sensitivity, you know,
Mm-hmm.
um, to, but they changed Clark's personality now too. That it's the Clark is who I am, Superman is what I can do type thing, the xenophobic,
Mm.
that whole thing. So now she can like Clark for for some reason only because they was trying to get them to be together now
Mm-hmm.
because of the he wants to be human now instead of turning Krypton into like this cold aliens are bad type thing. um
Which I hate that, because for a company that seems to be like pro immigration and all that stuff, they seem to want like arguably their most famous immigrant to forget the fact that he's an immigrant.
yeah, his Superman's whole thing now, even the Twitter fans or whatever, if you call him by if you say his name is Cal, they will swear up and down that is not his name. It was like, and it's like, why are you calling him that? He's not, he doesn't like that or something. And the thing is, his name is, um, I believe it means voice of God.
Mm-hmm.
It's Jewish. He was created by two Jewish boys. Why would you take that away? Why would you disrespect that?
Well, we're
Um,
dealing with a fan base that, remember, when when Superman movie came out, the creatives got death threats because of the Christian imagery in that. And I'm like, that's just the character.
yeah, I don't understand, like, these characters really shouldn't represent just one religion. They, you know,
You
just,
should be able to apply every different perspectives to it, like you apparently want. When you want all these diverse creators to have a chance in the book, that means they're going to bring their own diverse perspective to the book and to the character. So if you want that, this is what is going to happen. And I mean that in a good way, because I like seeing different perspectives on these characters. And I acknowledge that maybe some perspectives aren't going to be for me, but I'm not going to like attack someone just because they want to apply their own life experiences to the character.
yeah, no, we're not doing that at all. You would never want to do that because, I mean, DC, they did it anyway, with a
Mm-hmm.
whole fan base of alienated. Um, but
Actually, two whole
these
fan
characters,
bases if you count the Snyder fan base.
right? But what they what these characters are supposed to represent is everyone. They are
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be for everyone. It doesn't matter your age, your race, ethnicity, orientation, anything like that. They're supposed to just be, you know, no type of just blatant, geared towards this certain, uh, political view or anything like that. Because, I mean, it's escapism,
Mm-hmm.
and you want to escape from the real world. So why would you put, real world division into these stories that's supposed to be fantastical? Now, yes, you can have reality within it. That's what the New 52 sort of had of dealing with, like I said, Clark and Diana's um, outsider view of being alone. But at the same time, they still emphasize that we aren't this, we aren't that, we are unique in our own way, though. That is what they were celebrating, is that we aren't just this one thing. We aren't just, this one thing. We are something totally different, and it's okay. So
Well,
with
plus the
Ted
fact,
Price,
also with that, the public's reaction to the relationship itself is also very consistent with the way the public would react if you had these two godlike characters that are all of a sudden like together. And I'm like, yeah, that's realistically what would happen.
yeah, if how the New 52 played it was very much, they were like this celebrity couple, which goes back to how Perez first began it with, I think her name was Mindy. Um,
Mindy Mayer, yeah, I remember that.
yeah, and how they were basically like the publicity and all that. And that would have been, I've always loved that, to have Superman and Wonder Woman as like this celebrity couple, in a sense of they, are they, aren't they, will they, won't they type thing. Because it's something that puts them in the spotlight, but at the same time, it's just so cute to see, like, you have Clark and Diana being so within the people, you know,
Hmm.
and that's something that should have been played on. And you have the real world reaction to them, whether they're friends or, and they do, like, if a picture was taken, with them, and it catches a moment of something, kind of out of context, like how we do when we see the panels, and it's kind of like, um this looks very like not just friends type thing, you
Yeah.
know like, that's the kind of thing that they could play on with Clark and Diana's relationship, because it's so multi-layered, it's so multifaceted. You can do that with that, and they just totally missed the mark. And especially with Clark, his whole, you know emphasizing on the Clark Kent identity, And it's like, it's not called Clark Kent Comics. It's called Action Comics.
And
It's
I'm pretty
it's
sure
not
the other
called,
book is Clark Kent.
yeah, it's Superman. So, why would you turn that whole thing around and then to say that Superman is now secondary, or Superman is now the secret identity, or whatever. It's a weird backwards, like, idea that I really can't wrap my head around it, because I don't know how you can say that Clark is the real person, Superman is the fake persona, when Clark is like, he's pretending to be a human man, regular mortal, but he has powers. He has a fortress. He is an alien from another planet. How can you pretend to be that? That I don't get the logic of all of that.
Well, it never said there's a certain logic to what DC does. Trust, we're well aware that DC slash Warner Brothers and the word logical don't necessarily
Right.
always line up. But
Right.
so what I love real quick, and Brit sent me a DM saying, you're going to love the last two things I sent you. So she sent me, first off, a bunch of panels of Steve being creepy, which I appreciate that. So so describe to the audience these panels.
Okay, so this is from DC Presents Superman and Wonder Woman 32. And Eros, he fell in love with Diana. She rejected him. So he wanted to make her fall in love with someone else. And it was, of course, Superman. So they are trying to get rid of the spell that Eros has casted on them. But within this story, and this is within the Bronze Age, um, within this story is basically like, it's alluding that they do have feelings. Like, even if the feelings are based upon the spell, it's still in a sense of that they might have actual feelings. And even at the last page, when they explain to Lois and Steve, and of course they have to be with them, it's like, well, no, we don't want to, go on a date or whatever. And it's kind of like, yeah, it has stirred up some, some type of um feelings they have. Even, I believe it was still the Bronze Age, or it might have been but within the JLA, those comics, I think it was Adam that asked Diana about Clark, and she said, "Well, I already have a boyfriend." So it was things like that that will come, you know, um, in instances
Not only
within the
that,
comics.
remember in the Brad Meltzer run with the Justice League, it's like Liberty Bell, in fact, asked Wonder Woman, "Hey, why aren't you with Superman?" She goes, "He's taken by Lois." And that's it. She
Yeah,
doesn't say,
she
I
says
don't like him
he's
only as a friend.
unavailable.
Yeah. About her feelings toward him, she just says he's unavailable.
Yeah, it's certain things like this that really just give teases of what could be. And within this story too, it's like, it's saying that Superman and Wonder Woman is inevitable. It's some things that are, you know, inevitable, and you can see that when they're holding hands and they try not to, they are basically kind of like trying to fight it,
I
and they
love
have
that.
like
I
sad
love the
and they
way
have sad
that's
faces.
depicted. Yeah.
Yeah, it really does show that, yeah, there's something within, here that is alluding to their, relationship. But of course, they have to maintain being with the default love interest. But here's the thing, is that fans have always,
Yes.
made their opinions known.
And by the way,
And
when you sent me this next slide, that was when I legit started laughing out loud, because the whole idea about how Superman and Wonder Woman is a new 52 development. Well, I wasn't aware that the new 52 was in the 80s.
Right.
If so, I am
And
really old.
it's it's these kind of things that really shows the surface level, especially Twitter fans, that they don't do a deep dive within the history of these characters.
Nope.
That we have a timeline. I mean, even if DC says it, it's kind of like, no, we're not. We're going to ignore the facts. I mean, look, nobody has talked about the DC documentary because it's
Mhm.
facts. you know,
It's all
if it
facts.
was
And,
something,
and again, I mention this every time we talk about that superpowered documentary, but I just love it completely for a thing that's supposed to talk about like how it was all revitalization of DC in the modern age. It praises the high praises of the new 52 and completely ignores Rebirth. Completely ignore. I swear, Britt. When it was talking about the new 52, when it was singing its praises, I was like, I was bracing for like the shoe to drop and for them to be like, but it eventually wasn't the way we wanted to go with the characters and stuff, so we did Rebirth. No, not at all. And I was
yeah,
like, what?
yeah, they basically just all they did was they talked about the new 52 and then they talked about the diversity of characters, like bringing in, John and his bisexuality, Nubia now being the queen, or, the Amazons. But they never actually said anything about Rebirth, or, even with John. I don't even think they actually like talked about his character of who he is. It was just like the son of Superman and he's bisexual. That's it. You know,
Yeah, which that
that
in itself is kind of problematic. But I just love they ignored the supposed era that fixed DC in terms of a lot of Twitter fans.
yeah, it fixed nothing. It basically made
It
everything
caused more
worse.
problems, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. So with these letters, you have
Oh, actually, yeah, I'll reshare. Hang on one second. I think I may have gone too far with that. All right, so continue on.
okay, so with these letters, one is from 1980 and it's basically saying, someone had read World's Finest 204. And that's when Clark and Diana, they like a computer love type thing. They are very much ahead of their time. Um, Basically Match.com. They match on a computer, as the perfect date. And it's like um the person has very good argument. It's basically like Superman is always with Lois or whatever, but she loved Lois, she loved the super instead of the man, you know. And and the thing is, these arguments are the same arguments you know, that we say. And this is from the 80s. So if it's still in present day, that says a lot that things has changed, but not too much,
The more
you
things
know.
change, the more they stay the same. But I love the response that she got because she's like, because the respondent was like, I love the way you put that, Victoria. Your argument was sustained, clear, and to the point. You've won me over for sure. Now about the editors, dot, dot, dot.
And that's the thing, it's the editors. It's like they are so stuck on keeping these characters stagnant, keeping them in one status quo, because even the writers is like, um in with the NY CC or SDCC, and they have the
Yeah.
interviews and they
Mm-hmm.
ask, the writers their introduction to the characters, or, what's their influence or whatever. And the Superman writers and stuff will always say the Donner films, and they will say, post crisis or something like that. But I have yet to hear anyone actually say like the golden age. I have yet to hear anyone say, just any type of modern take that
Challenge accepted, Brit. I will work for DC. I will write Superman, and when I get that question, I will say Zack Snyder and the New 52, and watch all the air in the room get sucked out.
it would. But, of course, like we explained, last episode about the Donner films, they can be inspirational. Well, the first one can, but as that franchise, basically, it's not a good franchise for Superman.
It
It's
was for
not
its
as
time.
for
Now
its
it
time.
hasn't aged that well.
Right. It hasn't. And that's the thing. A lot of this stuff that we've researched, that we're looking at, it has not aged well at all. And these relationships have not aged well at all, especially with Steve, because within post crisis, he was an old man, married to Etta. He and Diana didn't, he thought of Diana as a little sister. He, was very much a father figure to her. They really didn't even interact after Perez. It kind of like he shifted to the background, and within like to I'll say 2006, he really kind of like they didn't have any type of connection at all. So yeah, within 25 years or so, Steve was very much, he's been irrelevant since the 60s, but in the modern, post-crisis part, 25 years of being in the background. And then you have now trying to have him as a, significant part of Diana's life beyond crashing on the island and her bringing him back because of a movie that the first Wonder Woman movie, it was good, but it has its flaws because Diana didn't know Steve but for what, about a week, and then she just like became obsessed with him, and like this the only love, and her basically giving up on humanity because of this one man, or that or the first idea that was brought up about Diana was that she was like this warrior that didn't know what love was until Steve. Like no. That that's not her
Or you
character
mean the
at all.
rejected idea?
Yeah, the rejected idea. It was like, no, that should never be. Diana's love should never be because of a man. That's not
Well,
her.
here's what you gotta understand. Remember, Patty Jenkins's introduction to the character was the Linda Carter show, and nothing wrong with that. I was saying that's why she had that whole emphasis on Diana needs Steve.
Yeah, even that is weird. I mean, honestly, but within even the Linda Carter show, I think they weren't actually like a couple. I don't think. Like when people kind of like post, certain things about it, they didn't really seem like you know, a couple in maybe within like the second season anyway, or whatever season, it was Steve Jr. or so so it
But
was kind of like, okay.
and by speaking of Steve, I just wanted to bring up real quick. I love the first line of this: "Get rid of Steve Trevor."
Yeah, I mean, this has been a thing
Oops.
for so long. Get rid of Steve. And of course, within these letters, it's telling the editors and the writers or whatever, put her with Clark, you know. But it is acknowledgement that, even with Lois, it's kind of like, for some reason, again, it's like the Superman editors, they want him to be like
They
a
want him to be
savior.
the way he was when they entered comics, not the way Superman needs to be for the general audience. Because here's what a lot of comic book fans and a lot of comic book editors need to understand. If for your business to grow, you do have to get the general audience on board. And unfortunately, that does lead to you updating the characters occasionally for the world that they live in. And when you don't do that, the general audience checks out. That's why you have the perception of the general audience that Superman and Wonder Woman are one-note characters. Now, we know otherwise, but in order for the general audience to get to the point where they will give these characters a shot, you do have to give them something as like a jumping on point where the character appeals to them. That's what the new 52 did, and that's what the Snyderverse did.
Yeah, when I came into, comics, it was New 52. Going back to the older stories with these characters. Yeah, like I said, Batman, sometimes he's stagnant, but for some reason, it's not as blatant as it is with Superman and Wonder Woman. Batman, you can do the, Wayne, Thomas and Martha, shot in the alley a million times. You can have Bruce stay within his, brooding, loner type attitude or whatever. Even with the whole Batcat, chase that continues on. You can have that, but for some reason, it maintains it being interesting. You can have Batman in these different type of they can only tweak it just a little bit for the modern era, for any era, but for some reason Batman is more acceptable of even the slightest of changes.
I'll tell you why. Because Batman is honestly more relatable to the general audience than Superman is. Because he's a rich dude, but he has no powers. It's just to a certain degree, Batman is a viable career choice. Where with Superman, we can't all of a sudden come back, come back, and we're all of a sudden the children of a dead planet. And when we walk out in the sun, we get superpowers.
Yeah, I get that. But I would say, with Clark being relatable, that's the thing. He can be, but the way that they try to make him relatable again is the whole I am, human instead of alien. And the thing is, with his alienness, you don't have to put it as from a different world. You can still put it in a cultural sense, though, to be brought down and, quote unquote, in an earthly type term of him being of a different culture, just like Diana. Diana, the way they speak of Diana is kind of like they act like she is from a different planet. No, she's from Earth. She's just from an island, just from an isolated island. There's no different than, going to someone coming from Hawaii, someone coming from a small island in I would say the Bahamas or, something like that from a different country.
Well, it's because, again, here's what you guys, that they have a very simplistic way of looking at it. Like, unless she is legit, like no powers or anything like that, she is not human. Because when I brought that argument to someone, she's like, she's blessed by the gods, she ain't human. And I'm like, the definition of human, by any definition, like Britannica or whatever, someone from Earth. If she's from Earth, she is a human. Yeah, there's no.
She's far more human.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was saying she was far more human than Clark. I mean, in a sense of the post-crisis had to have, like I said, the birthing matrix to make him be born on American soil. But within the past, he was already like 2 years old and rocketed, to Earth. So Clark is an alien. He is not at all a human. He has a heart of gold. He he's
It's
very
like,
humble, respectable
yeah,
because of the Kents. And you know, but honestly, I would say just in even with the Kents, like I said, within the golden age, the Kents were like the third option, I think,
hmm
because he was adopted or with, I think, a motorcyclist at first, and then he was from an orphanage, and then the Kents. But they, died when he was like 18 or something like that. So yeah, he doesn't necessarily need that to be simplified like that, you know, um,
yeah,
to be accepted.
100%. It
And
it's it just annoys me on that because I'm like, it, it's it's just it's just the whole thing is that the way I see it, they know they can't refute that, so they're taking the word human from a very superficial form of it, and I'm just like, it's not. It's
yes,
it's it's, it's
that is the
true.
thing. That is the thing. It's like they oversimplify things. They take it. They want to say that Superman and Wonder Woman's relationship is superficial when they say that they only together because they're strong and powers. No, you look at it that way without reading the book. When the book explains exactly why they are together, explains, even shows, why they are together, is because they are looking at outsiders, and how you can see the outsiders. I mean, even DC says it. They are outsiders in the sense of an immigrant, which is Diana, because from she had the choice to leave her island to go to another world. So that makes her an immigrant. Clark is a refugee because he didn't have a choice, and that he was, rocketed to Earth to, find refuge. So, yeah, you can look at these characters like that, but these fans refuse to see the complexity of these characters. They think that Clark being a himbo, Clark being this,
When they were because let me put it this way, I scoured Twitter for some reason when I was looking for the Lois Lane like clips for My Adventure with Superman. You should have seen the fan art that they put Clark in. It's the stuff of nightmares.
yeah, I mean, I don't agree with that whole thing. Um,
But
Clark
see,
being like uh, it's very much a, you know, um, fans can do, more power to you, whatever you want, however you see
mhm,
these characters.
that's
But at
fine.
the same time, you don't try to change these characters and make your head canon as facts, though,
Yeah,
because
that's why I always tell people because here's the thing. When someone put out something that I strongly disagree with on Twitter, I don't remember exactly what it was, and I said, okay, so where's the evidence on that? Well, and then their evidence was, well, I always saw it this way, and I went in the comments and said, your headcanon doesn't count. Where does it show it to me in the actual canon? I don't want to know your thought process to make this make sense. I want to see where in the actual book, in what's written down by the official stewards of this IP, your argument. Where is that? If it's not there, don't make the argument.
yeah, and that's the argument that you and Jordan had like what, a month ago, and it was like this
You mean
none
the
of these
argument that never ended?
Yes, none of this, what she was saying wasn't factual at all. It was just, well, I think this or I see it as this. Okay, yeah, you do have your perspective of things, but if it's kind of like in your face, like the relationship and what um it stands for, you can't at all refute that. Um,
Well, the
just
other
like
problem
how,
is that when this person told me she boycotted the entire new 52, and I'm like, then why are you talking about stuff from the new 52?
yeah, or that you haven't read it at all. You just skim through it or something. So if you skim through it, you didn't read it to have an actual, you know, um, critique on it. And so why speak on it? Um, Even with post crisis, you know, that whole thing, they take, I see a lot of taking stuff out of context or, taking things, and when you see the whole story, it is very much they they big up a lot of stuff, like I said, that's very problematic, that's very, um they like to gloss over things and take it out of context to fit their narrative. But when you argue against their narrative and you poke the holes, then they want to say that you aren't a real fan, that you haven't read,
That you're a
this and
tourist.
that.
I got called that. And again, I just send them a picture of my shelf and I go, okay, you want to say that again?
Yeah, and you shouldn't have to send pictures of, anything of yours to justify, you know, that you've read a certain thing, that you are a fan, or that you do support the books. I mean, honestly, you are showing that you are supporting the books, but like the argument that they had last week of basically DC Twitter
Oh,
is
God.
like tumbleweeds when it comes to the new comic book day, which is Tuesday, and they are waiting for the pirating sites to upload the comics.
And they've admitted this, by
And
the way. So it's not just us saying this. They have admitted this.
yeah, you all you have to do is just like type in the I think it's RCO, or a upload comic upload, all the tweets will come up. I mean, it's just it's out there. So,
Mm-hmm.
and or even people are posting panels like when they're trying to get the likes and the reactions and stuff, they are posting the comic panel or comic page with the website tag on the page. And it's like, at least crop that, but
Mm-hmm. But that
it's
would require
showing that,
actual work, Britt. That would require actual work.
right, but it's showing these companies, especially DC, that these people that you're catering to, pandering to, are not actually supporting your books. They are waiting for it to be free. Yes, some books within this economy, books are very pricey,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, and it really all depends, and you do what you have to do. And so I can see the pro and con to it. Is that the pro is that, you know, it's free access to these books that you want to read, and that's a good thing. But the con is the Twitter fans are conning, in a sense. They're making it seem like they're supporting these books. They're making it seem like they're buying the books.
Yeah, and DC is going off of their example. Is DC is taking their word for it? Oh, we want the books to go this way. And when the sales are not reflective, they're like, DC is like, but we gave the fans what they wanted.
Right. But when you compare it to the Superman and Wonder Woman sales, they will say nobody liked this. This was the least, this was a failure. This was this and that. But going to this sales, why, if no one liked it, no one wanted it, why did it sell? The debut was 100K. Why was it a very consistent book, even with Tomasi? Why was it still, maintain the high sales that it did to be one of DC's top books at that time? And they basically had to, you know, you Tomasi had to ruin the book, and it was canceled. Not even for sales, though. You know, with Charles, he said it. The direction change. It wasn't because of sales. That it wasn't that. In Tomasi, it wasn't because of sales, because there were books that they've had. Even now, there are books that they have that are very much even below cancellation numbers, and they
Hawk
keep them
Girl.
going. And
I
they
had
keep
to.
them going.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. And so someone brought up, well, why would they cancel a profitable book? And I'm like, you're really naive if you think DC is not run by people that have their own biases. You're real. That's the problem. They're naive enough that they don't think that DC would ever be as petty as we have exposed them to be.
Yeah, on CBR, it was within that time of the rebirth, all of that. It was an argument of why, if Superman and Wonder Woman was so, successful, why did they change it to have Mary, the marriage back in with John? And it's like, well, um, Dan, he wanted the Super Sons. He wanted Damien to have a playmate. So he wanted a son of, a Superman's son. That's all he wanted. But and you could have had that with Clark and Diana, but at the same time, it was I guess what it was that they too young for that, first of all. Having a kid, even though we did see the hints here and there, and even with Donna, we had that rumor of her being their like daughter, time, this place, or whatever. But having a son, I don't think at that time that would have been ideal. And it was also just Dan Jurgens, it was his idea in the first place, because Convergence was only supposed to be like a band-aid. It was supposed to be like a transitional period of bringing back the post-crisis, like telling stories from there, but as an Elseworld. It
Which
was
is
basically
hilarious,
that.
where the story that they used to bring back these elements was itself a failure and see Unity as a big mistake.
Yeah, Convergence in DCU, that basically was the downfall. New 52, they had already took the marketing label off of that, took the New 52 label off and put DCU on there. So no, it wasn't New 52. It was Convergence and DCU that basically screwed them over. And then Convergence, I think it was the trades that screwed up their trade market, because it was new number ones or whatever. So I guess it confused a lot of people. And then you have this transition of, like we said, DCU, and you have these problematic storylines, especially with Clark, New 52 Clark, of taking away his powers, taking away, having a buzz cut, the G's and T was fine. It was just that whole thing of basically like ruining that character on purpose to prop up Jerkins Superman.
Mm-hmm.
That is basically what they were doing. They were trying to prop prop up, the return of the Superman that supposedly everyone wants. And then when you get the Convergence spinoff, the Superman Lois and Clark book, it sells only 30K. It debuts
And
as
is
that.
itself an assassination on Superman. So when people hold that up, I even ask people that don't like Superman and Wonder Woman being together. I asked my friend Drew on this channel when we talked about stuff, and I asked them, okay, wait, all this stuff happens, and Clark does, and the superior Superman, the one that everyone points to as the real Superman, doesn't do anything when the Anti-Monitor invades. And even he was like, yeah, that's a good point. Wait a second here. That they were doing, and it's kind of funny, even when they're doing those backup stories now, they're only doing that so they can temporarily appease the people that want John to be a kid, even though it's not that much. I'm sorry, Tevye, but it's not that much. But it's like, even when they do that, I'm like, I know what, first off, here's the problem with that story. Because didn't they retcon it where in Superman Reborn, where like New 52 is on its own Earth, and they basically retcon the history of the world, so that whole period of Superman didn't actually happen. That's the thing, though.
Yeah, they are cherry picking things to, well, it's the everything is canon type thing.
Oh
So
God,
yeah,
I
so
hate
they are
that.
even if it doesn't fit, just like Clark and Diana's relationship, it's Orlando, Steve Orlando, he had it in Wonder Woman 754, and it was a Maxima story of asking Diana about her, her
Nope,
love life, how
I
it was
got that.
difficult.
I have the trade.
Yeah,
I know
and
exactly what you're talking about. Hang on one sec. Go ahead, continue.
and it was basically like the reason why they supposedly broke up, even though again we still never see an official breakup at all.
I
But
know.
what they say is basically she that she put duty, her mission before her relationship.
Here we go.
And
Yeah, legit. When I got this trade randomly, I didn't know that this was in there because I was like grabbing Wonder Woman books. I was like, okay, it's fine. I'm flipping through it, and then I see this, and I'm like, wait, Superman has a collar, so there's only one Superman where that happened. I don't remember this happening or even being, and that's the thing. To your point, the problem with this, it's not even like that they won't put them together or anything like that, is that the two editorial groups, the one for Wonder Woman and Superman, clearly on speaking, because in the Superman editorial, they treat it like it never happened. Where in the Wonder Woman one, they treated, oh yeah, it did actually happen. It just was in the past. It didn't work out. The point is, it did happen in the past. So I'm like, wait a second. You're existing in one shared universe, right? Well, you have to get your narrative right, because otherwise, just put them on separate Earths at this point, and then that makes sense.
the thing is, they are under the same editor. That's
the sad part.
It's the same head editor. And yeah, it's even with having the collar, with Superman Reborn, it was the New 52 suit was after he died, the original, you know, uh,
Mhm.
death of Superman. So he had the New 52 suit, I guess, because his powers regeneration or whatever. He needed armor because he was like vulnerable. I don't know, something like that. So it's kind of like, so you're saying that when he died and came back and had the New 52 suit on, he somehow had a relationship with Diana. That's what you're saying within Reborn.
When during the death of Superman, we know he was about to get engaged to Lois, if not engaged. So I'm like,
Yeah, so how does that work?
what? Yeah,
And then
it's this is why DC, this is why for the longest, this is why years ago, Britt, I advocated that DC needs a complete and total Flashpoint style reboot to wipe the slate clean of all of this BS and tell the editors and the writers to tell the editors, tell your writers to get with the program. If they're not going to do that, seek work elsewhere. Because here's the thing: if you're not going to stay with the continuity and try and do your own thing and undermine the continuity, we got problems. Unless you want to write Elseworlds, you got to stay you got to stay within these guidelines.
yeah, and that's also the thing, is that the editors don't practice what they preach,
Nope.
if that is what they're preaching. The editor, like I said, they are in this whole everything is canon thing. So like how we've had with the ambiguity of their relationship, of like I said, it's never an actual explanation of anything. It's just that, oh, they dated when they were young. It was a mutual breakup, but we never actually see that. It's something that we have to just kind of like it's alluded to, or fans or whatever have to say it. But it's like, no, that's not even what happened, because if you read the New 52, he died and he wanted to marry his last memory or whatever, or was saying that he wanted to marry Diana. And even with Diana, her, if you want to, take the Finch's run, her desire was to be married to Clark and have babies. So where within that whole thing of them wanting to have a life together, where did it come from that they mutually broke up? There's no explanation for that. So now we just have like those, now we just have like these, like I said, ambiguity type instances, especially with Conrad within his run. You have trying to have Diana with the Asgardian Siegfried.
You mean when she died after death metal, essentially?
Metal. Yeah, you brought in him, and he basically, like, that was a whole one night stand type thing. And the thing is, there was no build up to it. It was kind of like just a thing to do. It wasn't no type, and Diana isn't like that. She isn't going to have a one night stand type thing of no emotions of being with that person. She's going to, but they tried to have her, with him, and she didn't even know him like that. But for some reason, we are supposed to believe that she, cared for him. And then they brought him back, and he was like roommates with Steve. And now Steve has a girlfriend, but we never see her. But he actually, still wants to be with Diana, and Diana wants to be with Steve. But at the same time, the only genuine parts that actually seemed natural was within their run was Wonder Woman, Immortal Wonder Woman, and Wonder Woman 800, and also those little bits in between, like the Trinity issue of Clark and Diana. They are looking at the old watchtower. Even that, they brought the old watchtower back, but then they supposedly just had the Hall of Justice. Those
Yeah.
type of things. It's like, where did the watchtower come from now? How did it even?
The thing about it is that what it leads to is that it's I get it, these are small, relatively small details that they get like inconsistent, but it's when these things stack one on top of the other that it turns into like that essentially snowballs. It starts off as a little snowflake, it lands, and then it just builds and builds and builds and builds to the point where I'm like, okay, this is utter BS.
And the thing is, even with Batman, now they're saying that the Three Jokers is back somehow, and it's like, okay, if the Three Jokers book is, you know, canon, does that mean that Red Hood and Barbara, Jason and Barbara, like had a
That they did
relationship?
kiss. Well, they didn't have a relationship in that book. He wanted one,
Oh,
but I'm like, okay, well, I knew that was canon because Jeff Johns had said that when he was starting work on Three Jokers, he said previous to this, I had never done an in continuity Batman book, but now I have.
yeah, and it was like the whole mystery within Rebirth and stuff like that. But it's kind of like they are
Well,
now
actually,
trying to.
well, actually, it's not even Rebirth because if you notice, they didn't even address it in terms of like they brought it up in Dark Side War, then they just ignored it.
It's a lot of things that they, Jason,
Hmm.
Diana's twin brother, is
Oh
like
yeah, which I
you
liked by
know,
the way. That was a cool arc.
he, I don't know, it just seemed like it came out of nowhere. It's a lot of things that DC has that's so unnatural. It's like,
Hmm.
yeah, you want these twists, you want these reveals, but it has to be natural with the characters. It has to make sense within the character's history,
That's true.
or else it would be something that we as readers can analyze and poke holes in. And like you said, the snowball effect. It starts building up to where now DC has no choice but the, oh well, we'll just, cherry pick this and that, and you have to basically like turn off half your brain to, accept it all. And this is now modern DC. You have where even with Tom King with his Wonder Woman, and the last issue, issue 2, how he handled Steve. If it was supposed to be like this emotional thing with him and Diana, the artwork and King's dialogue did
Oh
not
God.
convey that.
Yeah, it seemed now to be clear, I'm actually enjoying his Wonder Woman run so far, but my problem with that to that point is first off, they need to get like straight on what branch of the military Steve Trevor belongs to if they're going to go heavily into that. But also, yeah, he didn't seem like he was in love with her or try because they've always played off that like Steve Trevor's always been in love with Diana. Didn't seem like that. In fact, it seemed like kind of an a-hole. So in other words, the way I've always seen Steve Trevor, so I appreciate that. But it's like you send him it's kind of funny. They send him to essentially talk Diana down. That's why they did it. But he did a terrible job of doing that.
And then, yeah, and then at the end, it was like he smirked. He knew that she was gonna win, or that,
Mhm.
as I guess as the reader, you were supposed to come to the conclusion that he's secretly, rooting for her. But you should have conveyed that at the beginning. But it still feels very much stilted. Like they just don't have a relationship that's significant. Steve has been in, the media, with the cartoons, with the movies, but it he falls so fast after,
Mhm.
like I said, the whole rescuing, the crash land rescue, and taking him back. Diana is not obligated to stay with him. You know, that relationship doesn't evolve. He's just a, I don't know, just like we said, preferring Perez's, father figure, big brother type thing, that works so much better. Or he's just someone that or it can just be someone that she saved and that became, someone that um went to the island and like New 52 pretty much had, that he was her ticket, you know, ticket out to explore. But
Yeah, it's just my whole thing with Steve is that his purpose to Wonder Woman ends the minute she leaves that island. The minute she leaves that island, he's got to go somewhere else because again, so someone actually commented on on a video I did about Steve. I think it was David. If it is, shout out to you, David. But the point is that he said because he's out of place because Wonder Woman's fighting like gods and stuff. What the hell is a dude with an M4 gonna do?
yeah, really, what is he gonna do? Mm,
Whereas with Superman,
Even
he punched her brother through a mountain.
yeah, and he understands Diana. Steve, he's always like talked down to Diana. He's
Mm-hmm.
always guilt tripped her, you know, and that's it. That's always been their dynamic. Yes, he loved Wonder Woman. He loved like as a
He loved the
fantasy, as a
costume, not the woman.
yeah, right. And and that's how, even with the only time that they really, I wouldn't even count the movie either, because
Mm-hmm.
he really did just seem like a friend and seem like an infatuation, this curiosity. Like if
Mm-hmm.
Diana is supposed to be 18 years old and Steve, I think he's supposed to be a um whatever rank he's supposed to be. He's years older than her. I think he's in his late 20s with, if you want to, go with the rank that he is within the military or whatever. So it goes into the fantasy of this young girl, regardless of trying to have her centuries years old, she still never has had that experience of anything like that. Even within the New 52, she didn't know what hand holding was. She didn't know what love was, in a sense of like these two people like caring for each other in that way. She didn't actually feel that with Steve. She was just pretty much going through the motions with him because he told her to,
And plus,
and
remember,
that's what was shown.
at the end, Justice League, I think it was 12 again. This is amazing. When it was after they deal with David Graves and Steve is in the hospital, and he basically tries to manipulate Diana because Diana sees right through him and is like, "You're only liaisoning with the Justice League because it gives you a line to me, and we're going to ask for a new liaison." And then of course he goes into, "Oh, they're gonna love this in the media. Steve Trevor dropped twice." And I'm like, screw you, dude. And then it's like, then he basically goes, "You would be lost without me. You have any idea what I do for you people?" And I'm like, shut up. You're not helping yourself right now. You sound like an immature jackass.
Yeah, and even in when they broke up with the Wilson run, he was basically, what about me? Again with the, you need to be, with me, stop being Wonder Woman, or Wonder Woman comes second and I come first type thing. And it's kind of
Yeah,
like,
on that was a hilarious thing because when I was looking at that scene, I was like, it doesn't work for two big reasons. Number one, you've known Diana conceivably since she was 18, let's say. Since she left the island, let's say. That's like a really long time, right? And you're just now seeing that being with Wonder Woman is tough. Second off, okay, you're a Navy SEAL. You're well aware that doing what you do involves being away from home a lot because you have to protect the people you love, and you're throwing a crap fit. It's part of your job as a matter of fact. You're in the military, even if DC keeps changing whatever branch you're in. My point is, if anyone should be on Diana's side, it's you, because you understand the when you're in the profession of protecting others, that involves being away from home for a while. So I'm like, this when I read that particular part, oh my gosh, you don't have time for me. I'm sorry if she's protecting the multiverse.
Exactly. I Lois and Steve are so selfish, but they, as humans, it, Lois is either, they even have covers of Lois like showing the time, like she's waiting for Superman to come to her or whatever. And it's like, well, if he's stopping a volcano or stopping, someone from dying, you can wait. But on the other hand, they can have Lois saying, well, can we take a rain check, or I'm I'm this and that for her job. And it's like, okay, so why is it that Clark and Diana have to sacrifice, you know, what they do as heroes or supposed to do for them, but Lois and Steve can't understand that Diana and Clark have,
Where
more important things to do. And that's the thing with Clark and Diana's relationship, is that from the start, from issue 4, or was that issue 4 or 5, when the shelter in the storm,
Mhm.
when Diana says, you know, it, can we do this being together? And it's like, if I didn't think we can do this together, we wouldn't be together. And
Plus,
then it's
not only that, but I want to bring this up. In the Superman book, just the plain old Superman book, there's that story where he and Diana, or like they go to, like, I think it was like a housewarming party for Lois, and Diana shows up first, Superman shows up next, and then they go on the balcony, and Superman goes, "I'm sorry, I'm late. I was dealing with like Superman stuff." And she goes, "Clark, I'm the last person you really have to make excuses for if you're late, because I know what you're doing."
yeah, and it was also another where Doomed. I think that was issue 11, when Lois asked Diana about the so like with saving the world or whatever, or was it a did y'all talk about that? Was it a mutual type promise or whatever? And Diana basically tells her the world comes first, before our relationship. If we don't put the world first, then we shouldn't be together. That's when we stop being together. And that's the thing, is that Clark and Diana's relationship is about those sacrifices and understanding. And that's where the true natural love come from. To say that they're true natural love or whatever, or this whole romance thing with Lois and Steve, is because Clark and Diana's motivation has to be from them, that their humanity comes from them. No, if Clark's humanity comes from Lois, just like how they had in the Justice League Drown crossover, Clark's priority goes to Lois, and he would let thousands drown to save her, one person.
And the thing is, I can't remember exactly which issue they have this in, but I believe it's in the new 52. And Diana says, "Clark and I have a special understanding that the world comes first. That's it. That's the way it
Hmm.
works in our relationship. We're together, but the world comes first."
Yeah, and then with Steve, it's just
Uh,
um
with Steve, it's "I come first."
yeah, it's I come first, guilt tripping her, that, and even with Rebirth, they brought that back of her being apo- she had to be apologetic, she had to feel guilty, and then she also had to go into a mental hospital. And
Yeah, I'm like, oh god. Particularly the
that
funny
just
part
seemed,
is that this was coming out around the time as the Wonder Woman movie. So at this time where you have like Wonder Woman being elevated to new heights, let's have her have a mental breakdown. Psh. I'm like,
I
what?
just found, yeah, I just found that so tone deaf, so like not very empowering because you, first of all, it's a total like we said, a snowball effect of the new 52. If she is supposed to be 10 years of being in man's world, you were telling me within the 10, so she's 18, she was 18 and now she's 28. And well, first she was with New 52 Clark. She was with him when she was 23. So now if within that same time she's 28, she was with him for 5 years. So within reality and New 52 or whatever that timeline. So yeah, the whole marriage thing that they were building up to was legit. And within that, that means that New 52 Superman was, I think he's 3 years older than Diana. So he would have been 30, 31 or something.
Mhm.
So,
Roughly, yeah.
so you have him, and then, but you want the Superman of post crisis, or he wasn't even post crisis Superman because Jurgen said that he wasn't completely post crisis. He was a new version because of the cherry picking and trying to bring in John.
But
So
most of it was post
he
crisis. That's the funny part.
right. So he was supposed to be like 38. So you have this 38-year-old with a 10-year-old. So that means that he had John when he was 28. But that doesn't go with the timeline at all. And then Diana is 28, so now you have a 38-year-old Superman. So he's now like 10 years older than her, and but
Mm.
they supposed to have a relationship somewhere within the beginning. And if you want to still use the New 52 Justice League, but now this Superman was within that Justice League or something like that, so yeah, all of this just contradicts everything just to make this work, just to make, and Lois too. She, she is supposed to age, because she's human. If you want these characters to be human, you show them in a human way, but yet you don't. You have her now as the editor in chief only because Perry had a heart attack. I
She's
mean,
basically Perry White. She even acts like Perry White. Legit, like she's screaming at people, and I'm like, okay, but and this is why I tell people I was like, if you have to turn Lois into other characters in order to make her relevant, that's a problem.
yeah. And even with this era of trying to have them with kids, John, he first, you don't see him like, even with Jurgens trying to have like the whole backstory of, he has like three different origins. He has the convergence, he has I think they they did his birth, yeah, like three times.
Mm-hmm.
Taylor and Jargon showed another one. Then you have him age up to now he's like 18, but Clark is still 38. They basically want them to stay the same age of 38, but he's, whatever. Then you have so you don't really see them as parents. You a lot of the Twitter fans say like they erased him, but you never see it. You never actually see how he grew up. You never see it's even with the Tomasi run, you know, he he does the basic. It's basically like John is rehashing a lot of what Clark did, you know. So it's
Hmm.
nothing unique there. And, and calling him sir in a sense of like very much trying to militarize, things with Superman and with that um make it political, you know, uh
And speaking of that, how about Lois and those twins? I know Britt has been itching to get at this because she sent me a DM on this saying, "What the hell is this?" So, for those that don't
so
know, in their latest attempt to de-age John Kent without de-aging him, they had Superman adopt two kids from War World, two Kryptonian kids. They grew up on War. I have to establish this for context. They grew up on War World, where you have to fight to survive. They get into fights at school because they're picked on, and Lois basically says, "I don't know how they do things on the planet you're from, but we don't do those things here."
and that just like really ticked me off
When she
because
sent this to me, when she sent that, I was like, "Oh, so Lois is acting consistently then."
first of all, well, actually the kids are like a different, they're not Kryptonian, they're something else. Um,
Okay.
but within the Kryptonian type, uh, that whole thing.
Hmm.
And but it's still the fact that they were children of slavery and torture.
Hmm.
And from first of all, the whole transition of bringing them back, to Earth, everything. What I can't stand the most is that everything is done off panel or off
Oh
screen.
yes. You mean like breaking up Superman and Wonder Woman in the movie? I'm gonna bring that up whenever anyone talks about stuff happening off panel because that's the most egregious example. But go on.
Well, that is because they don't have a reason. They didn't have a
Hmm.
good reason to break them up. I mean, James Tucker, his whole thing was basically Action Comics 600, which still doesn't go with anything because with breaking them up, even with that, it's basically Clark got cold feet. He, chickened out.
Hmm.
So you couldn't even use that as a breakup point. Um, with with the with the Lois and Clark relationship, like I said, everything it seems to be done off screen, or off panel. With John, you know, she um he was able to be conceived because Clark lost his powers. There was in a bottle city, he got depowered or completely lost his powers. But at the same time, he didn't lose his DNA. And Kryptonian and human, complete human DNA doesn't mix.
Nope.
Um, so, all of that. But to make John seem like this like golden child, this new messiah type thing, is like mortal, and especially with being half mortal, he's more powerful than a pure Kryptonian. They're going with the whole Dragon Ball Z Gohan method. And yet he hasn't shown himself worthy at all of being called Superman of anything. So you have Lois try to be this mom figure, and she's not. You don't really have any type of significant panel time. Really, it's very basic, the very minimum of her with John. Then with the twins, they just come out of nowhere. They have it where they like openly adopted them, but it's just said, it's not seen. Then you have the twins. Um, you first see them go to the zoo, and they are bored with going to the zoo. But then they also say, "So you take us to a zoo with animals caged up." very tone deaf, because like we were
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
It's like, why would you take me to a zoo with animals in cages?
Because
That's
I'm pretty
very
sure
weird.
Clark has told you the concept of war world, so you understand it.
No, she was only, concerned about the suit to turn into a sex suit than, you know, than knowing what it was about, bloody. I mean, you kept the bloody chains. That's weird.
Well, what I'm saying is that if this is the same Lois that has existed since the beginning of time, it's like I'm pretty sure, and all the times Clark has gone to War World, he has told her, "Oh yeah, when I got back, the people in cages and all that stuff," and I'm pretty sure she would know. Don't it's please don't do that.
Yeah. So now you don't really see them, even with Clark, you don't really see them interact with the twins. It's like they're there, but it's very, like I said, a bare minimum. Even with Clark trying to prop up Lois as he's saying how his name is Clark. He is Superman. He is what he do, but Lois is the one that gave him the Superman name or whatever like that. And that's it. But um to actually show them as adopted children, as him supposed to be like their father or whatever, they call him Superman. They just know him as that. But we aren't seeing them actually being raised as, as his kids. And then Lois, I don't even think they actually call her name. I don't know. Um,
Nope.
I don't. They don't refer to her. They just speak.
Mm-hmm.
And even with speaking, first of all, how do they know English so well? Because if you are on a different planet and you speak a different language, never see them like the actual transition to Earth. You never see them like when they went to school. How did they transition to going to school?
Mm-hmm.
How did they
Because that would be cool to see.
yeah, you have these, and also the way they are drawn. um Sometimes they drawn like little 5-year-olds, and the next they're drawn like teenagers. So that is an inconsistent part of them too. And yeah, the whole thing of saying that I know that you fought, where you came from, but we don't fight here. It's like these kids were traumatized, and you tell them not to fight. Any other like actual mother would have went to the school and would have, you know, had some words with the students or the teachers of like, these kids are, where they came from. You would have them understand the twins, not the twins, conforming to like this world. And I think that Kennedy was supposed to give them American names too. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like,
Which that's
if
again
these,
going to the whole Clark is who I am, is who I am. Superman is what I do.
I just, and they were also, like, it was also a thing where the kids, I guess it's the colorist, but I think that the original, artists that designed them drew them with distinctive looks
Mm-hmm.
and like a distinctive skin color,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit darker. But as their transition to Earth and to fit within, that whole family, their skin tone was lightened, you know,
Mm-hmm.
that their facial express or their facial features look very generic. It's very, it's not distinctive as it was for the artist that designed them. And it's like, again, you are taking away that diversity or that, different culture to have these kids basically fall into, or accepted into this American, society to be easily accepted within this. If they are adopted, show that they are adopted kids and they have a different ethnicity and, that, but instead you are conforming them to be acceptable within the American view. And that is still so wrong. And I don't understand why, with Superman, why do you continue to do that? Why do you
That's just the
continue
way DC
to,
does things.
yeah, be so, it borders, it's straight up xenophobia. It's straight up that.
It is. It is.
And
But
then
yeah, go ahead.
and now you're going even to borderline or crossing that line of racism. Superman is not supposed to be a racist character, yet his fans on Twitter and all of that is very much, I mean, the racism within this character is so, like, racism and Superman should not be. Like, that is something that
Yeah,
is
and
just totally.
to be clear, real quick, you're not calling the character itself racist. You're calling the situations they put him in racist.
Yes, yes,
Okay, good.
yes.
Just want to be clear on that.
Yeah. And and the fans too. I will say that the fans do delve into racism, a little bit. And it's kind of like, why within this world and how diversity is, being more accepting, being more celebrated. And Superman is the one character, along with Wonder Woman, or Wonder Woman even more so. These two characters are supposed to celebrate that. Yet you keep turning them back into no, you know, diversity within them, other cultures. Clark's Kryptonian culture, Diana's being Amazonian, the demigoddess is bad. You know, they have to have this set status quo. They have to be linked to these humans who is kind of weird that, to say that Diana has to be linked to Steve and he has to be like a liaison and then he's also in the military, and the way he's written sometimes is to be like in control of her. So you basically
Yeah.
are doing
So you're
very
putting.
much.
So you're doing the complete opposite of feminism and putting a woman under the control of a man. Yeah, well done.
And then you have Clark of like with Lois, she's an American, and also that too, when the argument between, you know, Diana and Lois, I saw that Lois is accepted because she's an American woman, and Clark being an alien, to be human is to be American. And again, it's like, okay, so you're saying that, you know, anyone from any other continent is not human if they aren't American. That is just like, what
That's the way it
function
works.
in your mind, you know, has anyone to come up with that conclusion?
But that's just the way DC does it. So we're gonna wrap this one up because it's a great way to transition to what our next episode is gonna be. So Britt and I are gonna take the current direction. We're gonna take DC where it is now, and then turn it into SuperWonder. So in other words, where like a couple episodes ago we did if we ran the new 52. Now we're going to do, let's say we're brought in to run DC now. Here are the creative and like editorial decisions we're going to make. So that is actually going to be really fun because we'll get to fix all those issues. So,
Yeah.
as we announced last week, Britt and I are collaborating on a fan fiction. So I'll give you guys some more teases on that. Actually, Britt, do you want to drop a couple of teases about our current story project we're working on?
Okay. Well, we have two. So our first one is the painful one that's gonna have me crying forever. Um
It's hilarious. Whenever I
we
send her anything, like ideas I have or like lines I want to use, I'll just get back like crying emojis.
I'm in the emotional like toll I am within this story, and um the song that I'm listening to, of course, I'm a fan of Beyonce, so it's a
Hmm.
song called Save the Hero, and it basically fits so well within this story, and it's so emotional already, so I'm getting it double of trying to write this and listen to this song. It's terrible. It's torture for me. So we're
Hey,
basically
you signed up for it, so there you
I
go.
did, and I'm accepting the challenge.
Mhm.
We have our, first part of the introduction, and now you are going to torture me with the battle scene.
Oh, this is going to
And
be so dope. I am so excited because those of you that don't know about me, I love writing battle scenes. So I'm going to go nuts with this one.
and and it's also what I really loved about this was I, I I really love within the stories that I write, especially with featuring Hippolyta and putting her as the like mother-in-law, and regardless whether Clark and Diana are together or not, she still sees Clark, as like the son she never had that cares for her daughter, you know.
Hmm.
Um, and he's so respectful to her. To be so powerful, though, he is like the total opposite. He's the antithesis of what the Amazons think of men, with power and of power. He's this very protective man in Diana's life that she actually can accept without feeling that she has to, you know, question him. She can actually, Hippolyta can actually trust him, you know, and to be able to kind of write that, continue to write that is, I don't know, I love that part of bringing their, mother-in-law, son-in-law relationship, because with the new 52, that's something that was a missed opportunity. And just, and I keep going back to post crisis, where Clark is holding Diana in his arms and he says, like, help her. I think it was
I love
it
that
was
one.
the Our Worlds at War, and
Hmm.
he's saying like, she's my best friend, save her. And then Hippolyta says, well, she's my daughter. It's like, that who cares for Diana more, or we both care for her equally. And just to see that dynamic come together is so beautiful to me. And then we
And we're
have the
gonna play a
mother,
lot. We're gonna play a lot with that.
yeah, and then we have the mother and daughter, um conflict with Diana and Hippolyta, and how Diana feels about her mother, and so yeah, this very touching to me, this story.
Hmm. And then the other one is just a fun little short that Britt and I came up with because I sent her like some Clayman Wonder Woman art, and then it just snowballed into we could always
So
do this, and this is gonna be more of a comedic like story.
it's very yeah, it's going with it's very fun. It's very Diana is getting into her comfort zone of uh her sensuality,
Well, let me put it
a
this
little bit
way:
of seduction.
she's enjoying her married life with Clark. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, is being spontaneous and being, just they are um just having fun with it because they can. You never actually see, and especially with Clark and Diana, the characters, if they're married or something, you can really go all out with them. You
Hmm.
know, you can put them in situations. You can have so much fun with their personalities. You can put them in different situations and stay within the core of who they are, and it's just so much fun to do this. And yeah, and the inspiration of Diana sitting in the chair, her figure, is
Yeah,
very
I sent this to
enticing.
Brit. I sent this to Brit, and I was like, "Oh, this is really cool." And then I said, "We could do a story about this," and she's like, "I'm glad you read my mind." So I'm like, "Okay, let's do this." So we're working on that. But Brit, do you have any other stories you want to give us updates on?
So with the young romance, the Athens story. So I've written the introduction of the JSA with Ted with
Hmm.
Ted Wildcat,
Hmm.
and him training Clark. And so it's a little fun with Clark being trained and Diana is within the mix and them having their flirtation going on and the friendly competition of the of the games, the Olympic Games. And the part that I'm mostly proud of and that I just really love within this story is finally having um like I said, introducing Donna and when Clark and Diana meet her.
Hmm.
So that story is on its way to be complete. Well, at least this first chapter. And then some more Austria coming and small, very, very small shorts that I will be completing, finishing organized and post those um Tumblr exclusives like.
Hmm. So
And that's it.
be on the lookout for that. And thank you everyone for checking out. If you approach this with an open mind and listened for the whole 2.5 hours of this episode, first off, congratulations, you made 2.5 hours of this. I really appreciate that. But also, if you approach this civilly, there's a place for you in Comics League. So on that note, stay heroic, everyone, and we'll be seeing you. Bye bye.